Good afternoon, everybody. We're back for MSP Confidential. It's, oh my gosh, the middle of June already. It's starting to get warm in many places. And one of the places where it's probably a little warm is in Atlanta. And I have the privilege of welcoming a good friend and respected leader in our industry, Marissa Maldonado. Marissa, how
Ooh,
are
you
you?
said it right.
Of course. She's CEO at Proda Technology, and we just saw each other at PAX 8 Beyond in Denver a few days ago. And we're having this one of those casual out on the patio conversations about things in life. And this comment around positivity and mindset came up. And so that was today's topic. But Marissa, good to see you. How are you? I understand you're thinly veiled, as you described it.
Thinly veiled and this is not an advertisement, as I sip my energy drink, because as you were said, Lewis, we just came back from PAX 8 Beyond conference, which was amazing. Full days, and then I jumped right back into it over here, and we had a great community event for marketing and sales development. We had a couple of partner vendors that contributed on the MDF side, and then I had my 90-day lunch with a new hire today. So I've just been in nonstop meetings. And I told Lewis, I'm like, here I am sipping my energy drink. My voice is a little hoarse. And I'm just, you get to see me a little unfiltered today.
And I was saying, it's the only way I'd be willing to have a guest on is if they were unfiltered. I mean, what makes you think that a filtered version of you would be okay in the first place, right?
Oh, that fair. No, I mean, literally, when you asked me, I was like, I'm going to be really thin layered on Friday. And you're like, done, you're coming on. So here I am. It's the
Well,
best way. Authenticity is what it's all about.
yeah, but I think that term filter is maybe a good place to start because I think we all have filters, we all have veils, and those adapt or come and go depending on the situation. And in the context of positivity, do you find that the veils maybe affect or change your levels of positivity or mindset, or how you show up, or are there certain constants of your personality, of your go-to-market, so to speak, that you feel are pretty unshakable?
You know, yeah, just be yourself. I think there's so much power of not overcompensating and putting on different layers to be something that you think you're supposed to be in your professional career, whether it's as the entrepreneur or even as the employee in an organization. I think authenticity is so important because we do so much and it can be so stressful at times with everything that we navigate. And so just starting with that layer of authenticity makes it a lot easier to do a lot more because it does get you get tired, right? And you need to reset, especially if you have introvert tendencies.
Mm.
So I love it. I mean, I think that was always one of the things that the beginning of growing the business and navigating and creating new relationships has always come so naturally because just naturally me, right? As navigating this wild world.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably layers though. Do you find yourself being perhaps cautious is a good way to put it. But coming into a new relationship, exploring a brand new customer MSP provider relationship or a new employee, how do you test the ground to find some of those maybe common places where culture kind of comes together? Because I feel like you don't want to necessarily come off too strong if you know your personality is of an outgoing type or things like I feel those are some of the veils or filters that way maybe we try to strategically put on to kind of create a little bit of I don't know, um, accessibility.
that's a really really good astute observation. I would say one of the hardest things that I did at the very beginning as we grew, especially internally here at Proda, we had up to like 12 employees. I was just one of the team, right? It was just we were doing it together. We were doing the work together. I was in the trenches as well. And then as we got a little bit bigger, if I kind of came to someone saying, blah, do this, or you did this wrong and do this better, all of a sudden the perspective of the individual that I was talking to had shifted a little bit. All of a sudden I was no longer just Marissa, who was either, was I doing field engineering work? Was I being the VCIO? Was I being an account manager? We don't know. Like, it depends, because I wore all the hats. And then it shifted to, you are the CEO of an organization I work at, and this is terrifying. So, yeah, I had to, and also because I am just who I am, um, I've hired some really, really great people that now buffer me from people. so, so I have to be more intentional of how I'm communicating and making sure I'm actually talking to the leader that's accountable for a function, and then they can talk and figure it out and solve things. And that's been, I think that's probably been one of the most challenging things as I've shifted who I am as a CEO. I was just talking about it at the panel at PAX 8 Beyond of every single day I wake up, I am the CEO of an organization bigger than any organization I've ever led before. Every day the organization grows. So it's my job to make sure that I'm growing faster and staying ahead of that so I can lead. And it's just constant mindset shift. So, but also I take the philosophy very deeply from Sarah Blakely, one of my idols. You don't have to, you don't have to be serious to be taken seriously. So it's all about having fun
Mm.
and
Yeah,
laughing
that
along the way.
yeah, I think people take themselves too seriously overall, for sure. And I notice that definitely as I get a little bit older, especially as I started getting into like things like stoicism. And I've talked a little bit about that on the podcast in previous conversations. But the stoicism has kind of helped me maybe containerize a bit of the things that I care about, and then kind of let most of the other things that I can't control really wash away a little bit into the background. And it's an interestingly empowering, I guess, mindset or position to be in when you finally don't care about the other stuff that you can't control. But it's an evolution, right? It's not like you really flip a switch overnight and suddenly you don't care, because that can come off, flippant, and it's difficult to reconcile in the long, tale of relationships and things that have been built over time, or the expectations that you set for others of you and things like that. So I think it's an interesting evolution. But you talked about mindset shifts, and I'm curious to maybe double click on that a little bit to ask you, if there's something top of mind, like a big mindset shift that you've had in recent years, where you realize, I really have to approach this a different way than how maybe you had stereotypically approached it before. And some of these things are maybe old ideas or judgmental approaches that we've had to things that we just didn't know enough about enough things to really make a sound decision on that kind of a thing, right? But,
I mean, okay, let's get spicy about a very raw moment where there was this transformational mindset shift for me. It was motherhood that actually like
hmm,
triggered that mindset shift for me. Um, it was, so my first child, she was born January 28th, 2020. I thought that actually transitioning of being a mother was going to be the most difficult thing that I had to navigate that year in relations to being a CEO of a growing company at the time. And then, of course, as we all know, what happened. And in that year, we had moved to a new, like, a commercial office space. So we had like there was these big milestones that were still happening that year. And I was navigating motherhood at the same time. And another thing that we don't talk about often, which I thought the biggest lesson that I learned through this was what happens after motherhood, like postpartum, and kind of how long that
hmm,
takes for you to be you again. It takes a minute, which I had no idea about. So, like, that mindset and just going through that perspective of being like, I can only be authentically me right now. There's no energy, there's no room for anything else. And um it was such a transformational moment for me, and that was kind of the key of, wait a minute, if I continue just following my gut and sticking to strategy and spending the time to have those long-term plans, just stay the course and it will work out, and just be yourself and call out your intuition as fast as you can. You
Mm,
don't have time to second guess your intuition. Um, and through that, we grew. We got amazing new talent coming into the organization. We restructured the organization. We implemented EOS. It changed my whole decision making process for how to solve things, how to have meetings, how to conduct myself as a CEO. And through all of that, then I had another child. So then I had to even lean further into what does it mean to have my role while navigating postpartum, while making these difficult decisions, continuing to grow. And I came out on the other side being like, wow, I can just be myself, and this is actually working.
mm,
So now you'll see me like, I cut to the chase with people. I don't sugarcoat it anymore. I think that's how you and I bonded for the first time, where I was just like,
yeah.
pop, 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 pop. Let me tell you what I think. So it
And we'll talk about that in a minute. But let me ask you real quick: do you feel like motherhood maybe challenged your sense of identity to a certain extent? What was the part that you felt was not you? 'Cause you said, how do I go back to being myself? Like what did you feel you lose or you lost or changed in that moment that kind of felt a little bit outside
big
your
time.
identity? Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time. Because it was actually quite this I would kind of almost call it, I'm like, well, it sounds a little dramatic to call it existential crisis. It's more like an identity crisis. Because not only are you changing your identity as an individual contributor at home to a you're contributing to these other people and they rely on you, and all of a sudden you have mother title to you, or from the man's perspective, father, which is also its own journey in its own right. um, but then all of a sudden I was no longer doing the operations side of
Mm.
the business, and that also is my baby. So it was like my firstborn child, aka Proda Technology, had had also grown up, right? It was all of a sudden I was like, wait, I'm not doing all of these different things for the organization. Am I still relevant?
Well, this is interesting because like so many people tie their sense of worth to what they do,
Yes.
like the actual activity, right? And it's an interesting thing to try and figure out like where my identity actually lies. And I so anyways,
Yes.
can carry on.
No, yeah, exactly. It's like that is a scary moment as an entrepreneur, or someone in like a very, very like strong leadership role, whatever it is, of all of a sudden asking, am I still relevant
Mm,
to this organization? Now there's things at Proda that like I don't know the process. Like if I actually went in to try to fix it, I actually might break it at this point, because there's a whole team that's driving this process. And
mm,
sure, at one point I felt like I was slowing down, but of course you're slowing down. But what you also realize is you have a bigger engine that can go further, faster, longer than you as an individual could have gone. So it was both me no longer being an individual contributor at Proda and no longer being an individual contributor in my own personal life. And they all came crashing together all at the same time. It was so intense, so intense. But, I have really good coaches. I have a really good network. I have
mm.
amazing peers. I
Love
have
it.
good friends that keep me grounded. And that's a great husband, all of the things, good family. The fact that my brother and I founded the company, and then our other brother joined. So I literally my whole my whole sibling network is here. So it's been very good to go through that and have really, really important people in my life that care for me unconditionally, helping me through that, because it's intense.
Yeah. I remember a little while back having sort of this conversation online on LinkedIn about the concept of work-life balance versus maybe the idea slightly restated to work-life integration. And I think that's nowhere is it more true than in the life of a founder or owner where that line is very, very blurry. And I feel like the pivot of motherhood or fatherhood is maybe one of those interesting inflection points where you kind of reevaluate everything that you prioritize in your world, in your life. And I'm curious how that has come into view for you, where your time is most valuable, where your time is most important. That could be family, of course. That could be some parts of the business, and maybe you containerize those two things in certain ways. But maybe it's very blurry for you. It's always been blurry for me. I just can't shut it off. But I'm curious to get your take on that.
Ooh, how much time do we have?
We're
um,
I'm good. I'm good. I love leaving these open into conversations without the time bumpers. So, go at it.
yeah, no, that's such an important question, and I think it continues being a question that we need to continue normalizing and asking and having conversations around. And again, it's not even a how do I do it as a mother? It's saying how do I do it as a father? How do I do it as a son or daughter whose parents need my help, right? As they get older, like whatever it is that you have outside of your professional world. And the biggest takeaway that I've received in my life is understanding non-negotiables and minimums.
Mm,
So when I refer to a non-negotiable, I talk about what is something in my life that is a non-negotiable and any one of the buckets that I have. Like there was a moment, so when we saw each other, and the fact that I went to PAX 8, and I actually went with a couple of my girlfriends from like my 20s, and it was such a special moment because right now in my current chapter of my life, my friendships, that bucket for friends outside of my professional world, I have had to very intentionally say, you know what? Not right now. Not right now. It's not happening. There's not even a minimum
mm.
non-negotiable for that. I don't have the energy and time for it. So the fact that I get to bring them was such a special treat. Um, but like, here's some of my current non-negotiables. If I'm home and I'm not traveling for work, I take my kids to school. What that means is I'm not coming into the office until about 9:30. It's not going to happen because that is a non-negotiable. There are rare exceptions where I will not do that, and I will take a work function over the priority of taking my kids to school. Other ones would be when I get home. If I'm home, I get home at least by 6:37, and we have dinner together, and I don't have my phone on me.
Mm.
And then I put my kids to bed. Non-negotiable. So those are my boundaries, right? Of everything that kind of keeps me grounded and doesn't give me a sense of what's the right word, of resentment of what I'm sacrificing for one or the other. And then there's non-negotiables at work, right? So on the other side, I have non-negotiables. Just certain meetings, like with EOS, right? Certain meetings, I non-negotiable. I have to be there.
Yeah.
I have 2 workouts a week because that's all I got. That's all the time that I have that I can give myself, but it's 2. And they're on my calendar and they're non-negotiables. So they're seen as a business meeting as well. So it's not really harmony. I don't call it harmony. I call it like, um, or it's not really balance. I call it more harmony and peace of like wherever you are, because there's sometimes where you got to hustle.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to get it done. And you're just like, you know what? I can't have dinner with you guys tonight. I can't take the kids to school. I can't do these things at this present moment because I've got to get this one thing that I'm focused on done. But that's okay because I'll come back to those non-negotiables next week. So just kind of resetting, constant resetting.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite expressions is uncommunicated expectations become premeditated resentments. And you were talking about boundaries a moment ago, and I'm curious how what your journey of communicating expectations or boundaries has been, because I feel like this is something we learn to do. It's an acquired skill. I don't think everybody innately knows how to communicate their boundaries or their priorities necessarily. And we resent other people when they encroach on those things, even though we've never communicated them. So just tell me a little bit about your journey of communicating expectations and priorities.
It's a funny story. I feel like I've had this conversation with a couple of employees here at Proda as well of their own professional journey, and advocating for themselves. And I know it from, so we'll get like, here we go, we're about to get raw and unfiltered. The the negative mantra mindset of you're not good enough. You should be doing more. Keep going because you have to overcompensate to be better than everyone else in the room, and like what that drive is. So we could talk about generational trauma. We could talk about, first generation Mexican, charting the way a first generation college graduate,
The weight of the
expectations of
world on our
the
shoulders. Yeah.
weight of the world, and my mom being like, I don't know how you're going to do it, but you've got to do it. You've got to break out of these old fashioned traditions. Um, and you have to really, really work hard on breaking that narrative. Because if you don't break that narrative, you won't even get to the point of calling out and communicating those boundaries that you need in your life. And then we'll have the question of like, well, why didn't you ask for this? And always the feedback back was, I didn't know that I could ask for it.
Mm.
Right. So like I do a lot of mentor mentee programs now, through my women in technology initiatives that I have. And it's always the same thing, right? Because I'm just like, ask for it. You deserve it. You deserve whatever it is that you need as a non-negotiable in your personal life in order to come back stronger, faster, clearer mindset in your professional life. They're so integrated with each other. So yeah, it's a however the mantra is, post-it note on the mirror, a reminder on your phone every day at 8 a.m., whatever it takes to continually tell you, like, give yourself permission for the boundaries.
This is maybe a loosely generational question to ask, and maybe ignorant on my part, but do you feel like people maybe feel um, like the expectation of an older generation of them, and let's be honest, like typically in most MSPs, an older generation is the owner, and there are now younger generation folks coming into the business. But where does like somebody feel like asking or having the permission to ask for something that they want or need, or that self advocacy or what have you, maybe crosses the line into what somebody might perceive as entitlement? And I think this is one of the things that I hear
Mm.
constantly from the older generations, that we feel the younger generations are entitled. And how do you help people think through navigating that a little bit? And maybe you don't view it like that as a leader, but I can tell you from a lot of people I know, that's how a lot of people might view it in their situation. But
I Several years ago, Simon Sinek, I'm a love love his messages, that he puts out into the world as well. He was being interviewed, and they were talking about this. And at the time, I was starting to like shift my mindset into what you're referring to, right? Just like, ah, they want so much and blah 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 blah. And don't they understand like what we're doing and why we're doing it? And he said it very, very articulately and more kindly than how I'm about to say it. But basically, it's our fault. It is our job to communicate these things to the people that work for us, the younger generation coming in, guiding and mentoring them, and being able to build a relationship where they can trust us in order for us to have those conversations with them.
Mm.
We can't have someone just come into our organization and us say, trust us, okay, and just do all the things and everything's going to be great. And then when they are trying to bring up boundaries, but they don't know how to properly communicate what they need or how they need it or why they need it, right? Like, why are they burnt out and they need wellness time or things like that? It is our job to understand them,
Mm.
not the other way around. As the leaders of these organizations, especially founders, managers, all of that stuff. So I don't, I don't, I don't think that way anymore, right? Of like the younger generation coming in. And also I'm an elderly millennial. So I'm right on the cusp. A proud elderly millennial. But I really think that culture is the new competitive edge of organizations.
Elderly
Um,
millennial, you're killing me. Well, the hindsight is always so feels like such a shortcut, and every time I talk to somebody about an inflection point in their life, whatever, the way they tell the story is always like, and so we did this, and then this happened, and then it was done, and it feels like this overnight shift. It never is, of course.
mm-mm.
And so I don't know if you're willing to get into the detail of that mindset shift, and what things you had to challenge of your own assumptions, of your own preconceived notions of how leadership, should take place, to kind of lean into the mindset. I don't think those things are, a one moment to the next kind of switch. Something, magnanimous has to happen before we kind of really believe it, and truly get behind it from every aspect of how we build the company, the core values that we explore, the conversations that we're having, and so on. I don't know, maybe there is something specific that you could point to.
You know, one of the things that I started doing was just watching and listening to other service industries and how they've been able to scale really incredible cultures. And the way you can determine really incredible cultures is how does the customer feel, right? So
Mm.
started reading the, Disney University, the Disney Institute training, the Ritz Carlton, the way, Four Seasons, Michelin star restaurants. So all of that stuff, I actually started becoming pretty like almost obsessed with it, of just like, what are they doing and how do they do it? Right? It was never, well, it's the employee that needs to do it, right? It was always, you have to lay this bedrock foundation to give them a community, an ecosystem where they can challenge their own limiting self beliefs in an institution where they learn that it's okay to do it, right? So, kind of going through that, I started like Frankensteining things and putting like foundations into our operational agreements, our core values, our everything. We have a thing called Proda Pledge over here that's hanging throughout our office, and it's kind of the pledge of how we communicate with each other and solve conflicts with each other. Um, we have Wednesdays. Every Wednesday, we focus on one of these core values or behaviors of the organization, and we give kudos to individuals that are personifying it. So there's all these just like these
Mm.
little things. And the best way I could talk about like a mindset, especially an organizational mindset shift, it's like working out. You got to start, you got to keep doing it. You have to be obsessed with the habit of doing it, not obsessed with the end result, because then you'll get really discouraged and you won't see it as like this tangible ROI of profitability or revenue or whatever it is that you're
Mm.
trying to achieve in your organization. So the best way to really look through and shift that mindset, especially as a community within your organization, is see it like a workout. The most
Yeah,
important thing about working out
it's working out.
is, well, no, even before that, the most important thing of working out is putting on your workout clothes or opening the door
Right.
and heading to the gym to go work out or walking to your Peloton, whatever it is. It's the act of doing is the most important thing. not
It-
the end result. So that's kind of like even those moments where you're very frustrated, you're just like, God, these dang young kids. Be
mm,
obsessed with shifting the mindset, not necessarily the end result of it. And then you have a fighting chance of staying consistent and staying focused on it.
yeah.
So
Impatience with action, patience with results. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, but it's like the pot calling the kettle black, though. I'm not telling you that I'm 100% perfect in this process. I have my impatient days.
Yeah.
So,
Um, I think we all do, and those are. There was this interesting post from Alex Farling, and that's actually who introduced us. Back in October, and we had a Princess Peach filled moment. I think all the veils were very thin that night, so we were just having a very open conversation. That's actually
that's
kind of what got us to this topic of positivity. Is that the conversation that night? The part I remember the most is we were talking about how so many folks that have been in the MSP ecosystem and then perhaps move to a vendor or go to do something else, they call themselves recovering MSP, technicians or recovering MSP owners. This was obviously rubbing you the wrong way. And I've never really used that term. In fact, on my LinkedIn, I just said, former MSP owner. But our conversation was so interesting because you really wanted to pull out the positivity of it, and like, why do we have to put this negative veil on it? And I remember I went right onto my LinkedIn profile in that moment, then and there, and I changed my thing to proud former MSP owner. And it's interesting just how saying it have has allowed me to lean into that mindset so much more. It's just fascinating, a little bit of intentional action on something that you want to change the perception about can have just in your entire ethos, if you will. But maybe tell me why it bothers you so much, and maybe I've just kind of answered the question by explaining my own position. But why was that such a rub for you?
well, words matter.
Mm,
Going back to culture, right? Being able to create a very positive mindset of growth, and as a result at the end of the day, it's then I'm providing an exceptional customer service and all the clients are happy and then the employees are happy and then you have a very nice sustainable business, right? Okay, now we talked about the business part. Now we're going to talk about the ooey gooey feeling parts. Those little words matter. One of the things that we talk about extensively here at Proda is we don't throw people under the bus. Ooh, that makes me so mad when I find out someone's done that, because it matters. Even if it's a little sliver of a statement, it matters because someone else hears it and they've registered it.
yeah. Oh, they're a
And
mess
they,
over there. They're like one
yeah,
hand's not talking to the other, the whole thing.
right? Or if they're talking negatively about a client, then the next time that client comes in, they don't have a fighting chance of the perception of whoever's on the other line trying to help them or navigate something for them or helping them solve whatever it is that they need to solve. So it's all so connected. Um, so I met Alex at a conference, and I knew of Empath, and I started getting to know Wes really well, and I met Kyle, and I was like, these are all like really good people that are like instilling a lot of positivity and community within our industry. And I'm sitting there watching Alex's presentation, and on one of the slides, as he's introducing himself, he refers to himself as a recovering MSP. And as I'm sitting there listening to it, I was like, I've heard that phrase more than once. And I think that probably at that moment was probably like the second or third time I had heard that phrase. So going back into this, like the influence and power of word, it's like, why is there a subculture within the industry about being a recovering MSP owner? And you're on stage teaching an MSP owner how to have a good organization and have a good experience and grow and
Yeah,
have fruits of your labor and all that stuff.
but signaling that it's a disease. Yeah, I totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had a radically candid conversation with him. And then of course, when I saw him with you, I was like, let me have this rant with you. Because it's like, I think in our industry, we don't talk enough about how to grow really good businesses. We get trapped in the conversations around the technology, which is great because that's what we do. We get into other narratives. And if I get burnt out, I'm not going to solve why I'm getting burnt out. I'm going to sell my organization. Maybe a
Mm,
little too early, right?
mm,
One of the things that I really was very surprised about in this industry when I started introducing myself and shaking hands with people and meeting people for the first time, they were shocked that I was a CEO and owner of a $5 million organization. And I was very confused at the time because I thought it was very small. So for me, I think that there is an opportunity for us to continue driving and influencing the industry for these businesses to continue raising themselves up. If there is a balance of our privately held organizations and a balance of our roll-ups, it's a beautiful thing. But if we teeter too far to one side or too far to the other side, we start to lose a little bit of the magic that has been our industry for so long and how we've been able to evolve and do the things that are so amazing.
mm.
And I think being an MSP owner is actually really, really beautiful. It's been such an awesome opportunity for me. It has, we've been able to ride the wave of different recessions because of our diversity of our portfolio of clients that we serve. There's never the same day twice. I love my staff. I love my engineers, and my operations side. There's so many good people in this industry. So many smart people. Like seeing what we did during COVID, like we were the backbone that made things happen to minimize the impact of such a devastating thing in our society. Like, look at the stuff that happened with CrowdStrike. We were the ones that put our hands on keyboards across the world to get
Yeah.
us back up as quickly as possible. Like, we are the ones that protect our economy from being siphoned to other nations when these businesses that we're protecting are the backbone of
Mm.
our of everything that we are. So I think being an MSP owner is something to be so proud of, and I want to continue cultivating that positivity so that we continue celebrating it. So when I was at PAX 8, we celebrated our first $1 billion MSP. Congratulations, Evergreen, Lyra Technology. That's awesome. I would love us to celebrate. We have $205 million MSPs. That's something that should also really be celebrated, right? And not creating this huge divide of our industry. So
Mm.
that's why whenever I see someone saying they're a recovering MSP owner, I'm going to challenge them because I'm like, no, you should be proud. Like,
That's
this
fair.
industry is awesome.
And we got into a little bit just this week about maybe a slightly different perspective on why that term is used, and it's not necessarily the view that it's a disease or anything, but it's kind of more rooted in the sense that we have this shared struggle, um, and that it is a difficult thing to live in and day out. The negativity that innately comes with just dealing with tickets every day and so on. And so it's not always necessarily seen as a complete opposite of positivity. It's just a signal to the shared struggle. But one of those reasons I think there is a shared struggle is maybe the traditional complacency, if you will, that kind of creeps in as we deal with the journey of a client. They come in with a problem, we kind of stabilize them, the problem goes away, and then we get comfortable. And I think this kind of mirrors a lot of the patterns of life too. When you're always very excited at the beginning, and sustainability is kind of the goal, doing something for executing at the highest possible level for a long amount of time, and that's it can be really difficult. But in the sense of like, to bring this back to the culture conversation, my question to you is, how do you couple positivity, which can almost feel, I guess, at times as maybe an excuse to it's okay if this situation was a little mediocre, for example. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just simply an example. How do you reconcile positivity with performance, I suppose? And I'm not saying they're opposite, but they maybe could be perceived as that in certain
Huge.
situations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good question. So, the Harvard Business Review has a really great book around culture, and you're exactly right. Of like, so it's like they put the different traits of different cultures, and kind of like you'll see these specific traits, and they're kind of all clustered together. You see these, and they're kind of all clustered together, and it's, they have it on a quadrant around like performance to feel good.
Mhm.
And if you're a high performance organization, that feel good positivity is on the other side of the
This is
spectrum.
this is what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's not easy to do it, right? Which goes back to, that's why many people don't do it.
Mm.
It didn't say it cannot be done.
It's just
It's
not
just
easy.
not inherently natural.
Yeah.
So, you know, EOS, so good. Everyone having a number. So that's entrepreneurial operating system. So it's just a different type of playbook. There's all sorts of playbooks. That's the one we adopted in our organization. Many MSPs are familiar with it.
Yeah.
Having that positivity has to also be coupled with very clear expectations of every individual person's role in the organization. SLAs, one of ours is like our call rollover. So how many times we're actually answering the calls for first time resolution, like all of these different types of key components. And we are obsessed with them. So you have to do both. You can't be lackadaisical on one or the other. Um, you know, there's so many good resources about this phenomenon. I'm a huge fan of uh, from Kim Scott, Radical Candor. It is such a great book. It's like sitting right there on my bookshelf. I made my entire leadership team read the book, and then I will give credit, not myself, but someone on my leadership team was like, everyone should read this book in our organization. So our entire organization has read the book. Every new hire that comes in, they have Radical Candor on their desk to read as well,
I love
to
it.
really kind of lay down that foundation of, we're going to be really nice, but we're also going to call you out and be very direct with you. But it's our job, going back full circle, it's our job to build that trust with you first.
Sure.
We can't just do it, but we have to meet you where you're at. We have to help you navigate maybe some of these learned behaviors in different organizations that you're coming in with, which is like those preconceived notions of like, how do I talk to a CEO? They're scary. You don't talk to a CEO. And kind of really kind of bringing it all together. Like, perfect example, when after the first 90 days for an employee, I take them to lunch. When I first started doing that, the first couple of 90-day lunches, they were like,
Eyes wide open, a little scary. What are we going to
what
talk about?
happened?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. What happened? Why are we having lunch? Through time, it's turned into such a cultural rockstone of a new hire process. I got like really positive feedback from the team. They're like, everyone gets really excited about that 90-day lunch. I take them to a really nice restaurant. They know from their community that this is actually a super positive thing. It's it's just a casual lunch with a person who just wants to get to know you. So it takes time, but balancing it all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're a hard performing organization though, and as you've learned, Lewis, from interacting with me, when I have an opinion about something, once I have established a trust. And that's why I was like, oh, a friend of Alex's, and I've heard a lot about Lewis. I've been told I need to meet him. Okay, let me let me get right into it with you.
And we did. And we did. No,
Yeah.
we wasted no time at all.
I know,
Um,
we became fast friends.
I do like that. I tend to be, very direct about these things that are interesting. And I find myself, and we were talking about this week, that it's so interesting to see how on the black or white side of any particular scale most people try to be on. And I think that's just one of those human conditions. Interestingly, we kind of dig our heels into the decision and we just want to be over on one side or the other. Um, and I certainly are more and more comfortable with the gray area of all these little, evolutions of the things in our domain, in our life, in our family, in our professional life, and so on. To the point, I don't know, maybe the stoicism too, but at a certain point, I started thinking, uh, this struggle that we all share so much. This is and smart people. I have so many thoughts here. I want to try and get out. Let me allow me a second to try and do so. So Dr. Becky Little, or Dr. Becky Good, I think it is. She had this little video where she talked about how building resilience doesn't feel that great because you have to be very uncomfortable in the process. And especially smart people who want or expect to be at the answer very quickly, when they can't get to the answer, they tend to just move on to something else. And so this is kind of why the long term execution for folks in our industry can be really difficult. And then I read Ray Dalio's Principles, and then I was into, like, he talks about this concept of struggling well. And so many little kind of signals coming at me of like, hey, the gray area is important. It's okay to be in there. It's okay to struggle. The trick is to figure out how to struggle well. And that is more and more present as I get older. And I can't help but think maybe the go-getter nature of a younger personality maybe prevents you from kind of just being a little less one-sided about every single issue and more kind of in the middle, just trying to figure it out. But I'm curious your position on that, where you find yourself on that spectrum of black or white, and if you understand this whole thing about the gray area that I'm trying to talk about, and how much it matters to you.
Yeah, I immediately thought, I was like, I should show you this painting that I just got. It's not hung up yet. We're gonna hang it in our new office, but I was really gravitated to it, obviously, because it also has green in it. So of course I wanted it because it has my Proda colors. But it says, um, uh, get uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And then there's
Mm.
all sorts of other cool things on it. And it says at the very end, it's like same finish line, right? We all, at the end of the day, it's all the same finish line, right? And we have to be obsessed with pushing ourselves into the gray area. And the moment that we're not in the gray area, enjoy it for a brief moment.
When with certainty anything, enjoy it, but it'll be short-lived, probably.
But enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it's a beautiful moment. So
Yeah.
there's this really cool, it's like this diagram that I use that one of my business coaches gave me. There's a couple books around it. It's called The 7 Stages of a Business. And then there's another one called the different stages of a business owner. Business owner, business. Both kind of the same, but kind of not. So of course, first I was like, if I stay focused on the 7 stages of the business owner requirements, and the 7 stages as an individual, that will shift as well. And at the very beginning of running my business, I would always describe my journey like rock climbing. And then
Mm.
this diagram, when I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's actually an illustration of exactly what I had, where it's like big blocks of stages and then these tiny little steps in between each stage. And every time people would ask me, well, how is it going building a business? I'd be like, it's like rock climbing. Harness in, you go up the wall. If it's an easy route, you probably get to the top without any issue. If it's a hard route, well, first you have to make sure you're trained for that hard route, or else you're not going to have a fighting chance to even get there. And if it's pushing you beyond your limits of physical limitations, you might climb up and then you might fall and you might be able to get back to where you started, but you might actually have to go all the way back to the bottom and then start over and go and start over. And then all of a sudden you'll get to the top, and if you're outdoor climbing, you're actually at the top of a mountain. So you're actually standing there and you put both feet back on the ground and you're like, and then you do it all over again.
Mm.
The journey is not to get to putting both feet on the ground. The journey is the act of rock climbing. So the same thing with being an entrepreneur. The journey is not to get to that finish line.
Totally.
It's the act of going through whatever you have to do in order to continue leveling up. And I always say it's not about it ever getting easier. It's that you get stronger. The things that I have to solve for today, 14 years ago, Marissa, would have been like, there is no possible way I could ever navigate and solve something that complicated. But here I am, right? So it's just that constant just understanding of being constantly uncomfortable, comfortable in the uncomfortable, that gray matter, but also enjoying those moments of pause.
Yeah.
Or else you get burnt out.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you're a recovering MSP owner once you sell your company.
See, you kind of arrived at the same conclusion somehow magically. No, I totally get the importance of this struggling well, and this has been a central theme for me the last couple years for sure. And I talk about it a lot. I think when people are coming across problems, and I see this in rooms of MSPs when I go into a peer group, for example. There's a pragmatic approach to all things, and there's maybe, and I just discovered a way to talk about this because I recently came across the concept of Wittgenstein's ladder. Ludwig Wittgenstein was a philosopher that talked about this idea of like once you climb the ladder of a problem, there might be a point where you have to like kick the ladder away to prevent yourself from actually wanting to go back down. And in your analogy of rock climbing, it sounds like, getting back on the ground and kissing the ground type of thing, because that feels comfortable, right? And sometimes in order to level up, the only way is to remove the previous level altogether. And I thought
Right.
that was so insightful because sometimes you just have to flip the script entirely and give people no chance but to move forward because now your back is against the wall. And so I think it's an interesting, I don't know, philosophical approach to thinking, how do I progress past this point and level up? And so, anyways, just a thought,
You
not so
know,
much of a question.
I love that thought. And I think um one of the greatest surprises that I've had in my role on this entrepreneur journey is how deeply philosophical my role has become. That was a surprise. Didn't think so, right?
Yeah.
Of like getting to the point of like, how do we keep leveling up? We have to get in, we gotta get deep. Like we gotta talk through these things. We gotta be curious about this
I
stuff, you
know,
know?
and it's tough because some people will be like, that's great, but tell me what to do, And so I feel like you're trying to inculcate a bit of like the action item required through the philosophy, but sometimes folks need a slightly different approach. But yeah, anyways, carry on.
No, but I exactly. There is not a silver bullet to this. Like when people come to me asking how to solve a problem or how to navigate something, and the greatest compliment is like when emerging leaders in my organization come to me with these really cool questions. I think that's just so awesome because it's like, yes, there's really cool, awesome like leaders that are being cultivated in this beautiful space at Proda. Um, I'm like, I say it every time. There is no silver bullet to what you're trying to solve. And also, there's like a bajillion books about it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Because everyone's trying to find a different way of solving whatever it is that you were seeking to solve. But like Lewis, I think that's one of the reasons that you like I was so like drawn to talking to you, and immediately I saw that like, oh, you have all of these other cool things that you've cultivated in your life, like your passion for music, and that like complementing it and becoming more of this just whole person that allows you to lean on the things that you love in order to lean into the uncomfortable of doing what you do and the influence that you have in this industry. I don't think that's accidental at all. So it's good to have those things and actually give yourself that permission to be in those spaces so that when you have that moment of reprieve, you can lean into your other passions.
Yeah, well, thank you. I right back at you in the sense that this is maybe the wavelength that sometimes you find yourself uh, feeling a bit of that harmonic resonance with somebody on. And I certainly feel that a lot with you because you are so open to going deeper. Despite the you wanting to or not wanting to do it in that moment, you'll still sort of capitulate to the need to discuss the idea. And I think that is such an important and fun thing to experience because you're never mailing it in a conversation. And I just love that about you. So I appreciate so much your transparency, your candor, and just being so honest about some of these challenges that we all go through.
Well, I appreciate you having these conversations because it's such a great thing and to continue talking through and um, cultivating a really beautiful industry that does such a core critical function in our professional ecosystem. It's awesome. It's really
Yeah.
cool. I am a current proud MSP owner.
I love it. What a way to bring it all back together. Marissa, thank you so much, folks. This has been Marissa Maldonado, Marissa Maldonado of Proda Technology. Marissa, I'm proud of you for your leadership skills.
You
I've been
ended it
waiting.
with a dad joke. That's great.
I've been waiting 2 days to throw that in. And I look forward to our future conversation as we continue to evolve and maybe check in and see, what the growth line has been like for all of us as we continue in this fun adventure that we're all so proud of. Absolutely. We're here every Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific for MSP Confidential. Marissa, hang out backstage for 2 minutes. Thank you again. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Likewise.